Hey, everybody. Welcome into Talking Tactics with Coach Gough. I am Coach Brad Gough, and this is your FC Cincinnati versus the Philadelphia Union recap show. FC Cincinnati finally got back to that winning feeling in their final regular season match, which was a 2-1 win over that Philadelphia Union. Things looked dismal to start when the Union took the lead not even 2 minutes into the match. But the Orange and Blue stayed calm, they met their opponent's intensity, and they battled back to tie the match before the stroke of halftime. Then, after they were gifted the lead by a horrific own goal early in the second half, they held on to the lead, sealing the win and claiming a spot in next year's CONCACAF Champions Cup. We're going to ask why FCC needed an own goal to get this win, how good the defense was on the night, and much more. And we're going to talk about it all with the one and only Justin Hoyte. Justin, how are you doing today, my friend?
Great. Different starting time for us, coach, but no, I'm great. I'm good. Happy the team got off to got off to a rough start, but got back onto winning ways just before the
Yeah.
playoffs. So I'm great. I'm looking forward to the playoffs now, and this is the real business end now. So that's what I'm looking forward to. How are you,
Yeah.
coach?
And,
How's things? How's early morning recording for you? How are you?
I got my coffee here. It's early on the East Coast, so I could meet Justin at afternoon UK time. So we'll see if we're even better today. We'll know that maybe I'm a morning person after all. Justin, I think the biggest thing about this match for me was I enjoyed watching it. It was angsty in that they couldn't finish their chances, but there were so many of the parts of those passages of play, which we'll talk about, where players were combining and like letting the ball roll through to one another and like that pretty soccer that we've seen this team play from time to time. And I think if this team can get hitting on all cylinders, doing that kind of play and also scoring goals, they really could beat anybody on their day.
Yeah.
Am I expecting them to go run through this playoff system and win the cup? I'm not expecting that, but it is possible. And I mean,
Mhm.
hey, it's really, other than a possibility, what more can you ask for? Before we get started, Justin, I'm going to let everyone know that we are sponsored by Apollo Home. So, listeners, give them a call as we head into winter or I don't know, summer here. It's like going back between like 80 degrees and 40 degrees. So, but whatever your need is, HVAC, plumbing, or electrical, give Apollo Home a call. And before you do that, and while you have your phone out, head on over to the socials and give us a follow. I am at FC Cincy Tech Talk. He is at Justin Hoyte 32. And as always, you can drop us a note at Cincy Soccer Talk or in the electronic mail slots feedback at CincinnatiSoccerTalk.com. All right, Justin, let's get right to it. The Capital de Buch says, we scrapped and pressed, but we just can't score. Melvin Dillon says, he's concerned about our scoring ability heading into the playoffs, and we can't keep letting the other team score first. Rachel Rozelle wants to talk about turnovers in the midfield. So a lot of concern amongst the listeners, Justin, about this offense, about the lack of production. So let's get started
Yep.
to talk about that. The first thing that I wanted to note here is I noticed, like I said in the intro, a distinct difference. One thing that I think helped that is the personnel. So with Kubo up top and then Luca Orishano and Lucho Acosta up there alongside him, and then with Yamil Assad on the left, they had
Mhm.
four creative attacking players that like to drift in and out of space. It looked to me like when they had the ball in sustained possession, they moved into almost like a 1-4-2-3. So basically, Miles is a sweeper. That's the one. Then the
Mhm.
two outside center backs pushed forward, flanking Obi and Buka like a line of four.
Mhm.
Lucho would often drift wide left, and
Mhm.
Yedlin would be wide right, almost as wingers, and then a front three of Assad, Kubo, and Orishano. And it wasn't every
Mhm.
time. Sometimes Assad stayed left and Lucho was up there. But this sort of 1-4-2-3 look, I think it looked completely intentional to me. It looked like a different offensive setup, Justin, that would allow those players more bodies ahead of them to move. So it wasn't always looking up and having one option or no options.
Yeah, it was definitely purposely done. Probably worked on at the training ground, worked on personnel, players in certain positions, certain movements they like to make, probably playing to the player's strengths positionally. Um, so yeah, I feel it was very, very intentionally. And like you say, coach, it was more of a when players look up, there's more options available, which I feel in previous games, and we spoke about it, needed to be the case players have looked up and there's only been one or two options. With this lineup and this kind of formation and this way of playing with the certain personnel, it certainly gives you more than one option on the ball, which is what the team needs going into the playoffs. And other than a bad early start to the game, I feel that it kind of worked and looked like it was working to a certain extent. And it's good to see that they've figured this out at the moment. But has it come a little bit late going into the playoffs
Yeah,
to try and
we need to
gain
talk
that
about that.
consistency and to gain that understanding of where the players need to be in certain moments going into the playoffs? So it would have
Yeah,
been
and
great if we would have had 2 or 3 games going into it, but one game going into just before the playoffs. Is it a little bit too late? We don't
yeah,
know.
we've talked a lot about that consistency of lineup. With those bodies ahead and those options ahead, the other thing that we talked about last week that it seems like they were willing to do is this time players were willing to run in behind and stretch
We
that
needed that.
field, especially on the weak side. So, like, oftentimes the ball would be on the right with Yedlin or on the left with Lucho, and you'd see that player on the opposite side really pushing in
Mhm.
behind that back line, causing that outside defender on that side who has to try to watch the ball on one side and watch the man on the other to kind of drop his shoulders and turn his hips and move back, pushing that offside line back, which I think was a really intelligent way to create space on the ball side with those weak side runs. I wonder, Justin, do you think this is entirely reliant on the personnel? You have Kubo and Luca instead of Nico or Big Kev. Or do you think that this tactical adjustment could be something that Pat Noonan and company can keep in place and say, guys, we can have this team spacing. We can make these runs and create these space no matter who is on the field?
I think it's with the personnel. And why I say my personal opinion is with the personnel is I feel it's the personnel's ability on the ball. You look at Kubo or Ashano or Shard, Lucho, Buka is able to push forward now in this kind of formation that we're looking at. Yedlin gets to attack, which he created a few chances early in the first half. I feel it's down to personnel, just the way they play, just not being out and out strikers, out and out forwards. I feel that they're more open to getting into the right areas and right spaces to receive the ball and move it on. So I feel it's down to personnel. I feel they played that well, and it looked to me is that was the reason. How as a coach, you're looking at it differently to how I'm looking at it at the moment. How would you see that? Do you see that it's down to personnel, or it's more of right, this is how we're going to play moving forward because it's not worked previously?
Yeah, I certainly think the personnel helps because that's their natural way of wanting to play. Kubo likes to get in behind. Luca likes to come to the ball and kind of combine alongside with Lucho and find those like kind of key areas in the middle of the field. Assad too is creative at coming in off the wing. So those kinds of things help. But I do think you can do similar things. Like if the goal is to create space around the ball and not always run towards the ball, you can have a guy like Big Kev without having him run in behind. You can say, get on those center backs and pin them. Don't try to get
Mhm.
away from them, occupy them. I'm sure everybody who's watched the English Premier League has heard the announcers say, oh, the big lad occupying the center backs, right? Like you got to occupy them. You got to just force them to mark you, right?
Yeah.
So I think that it's doable, and I hope to see that regardless of who is on the pitch. We're going to talk about the goal that FCC did score, but first, I want to talk. You mentioned creating chances, because there's this worry that the team hasn't scored. But I think as a coach, there's also this very real idea that sometimes you're not going to score every chance. But if you're getting into a lot of good areas, then you're going to win more games than not. You're going to make it count. In
Mhm.
the ninth minute, there was a fantastic clipped ball from Orishano, who was hanging out on the right, looking for Assad making a forward run. That's that back post forward run, like I talked about. Harriel gets the header,
Mhm.
but he's going back towards his own goal. So it's only as far as Lucho. Lucho explodes forward, gets on the second ball, plays a little 1-2 with Assad, and then clips the ball back toward the right for Yedlin, making that hard run to the back post. And Yedlin gets up well and slams a header on goal, but it's pretty much right at Andre Blake. A really good chance. In the 39th minute, Miles had possession in the left half space right around the midline. He spots Yedlin again, making that hard run, pings a ball toward him. hits it a little bit, but the defender is trying to defend, running back towards his own goal. So he can't get his feet right. Yedlin comes back to the ball, chests it towards Kubo, who had kind of folded underneath. Kubo plays it immediately to Orishano, darting in on the right side of the box, and he ends up getting a shot on goal, but it's on his right foot, which is his weaker foot. It's not a great angle, so it's saved easily. And then, there's that chance right at the end of the game, the 90th minute, when Lucho cleared long after a corner. The Union were pushed up needing a goal, and Nico is running in on goal. Has a long way to run, kind of runs out of steam, and Santos comes streaking in behind him and ends up getting a shot, tries to Meg Blake, and Blake just barely gets a touch to it. So it's not like this team didn't have some really good chances. Those weren't even all of them. We'll talk about them more later because Yedlin had another couple that I want to talk about when we talk about his play specifically. But those are 3 golden opportunities that even if one of them goes in, the whole narrative of this game is different. That like you won 3-1 and we're pretty comfortable doing it, right, Justin? So overall, are you more like Captal and Melvin, struggling with FCC's inability to score and feeling as a fan like, man, are they going to be able to score in the playoffs? Or are you like Pat Noonan, and we've heard some of the coaching staff talk about how well the game was played, where you feel more hopeful because they created so many good chances this match?
No, Coach, you got to be honest. They created chances. Like, you look at Yedlin's chances. They created 2 clear-cut chances for him. Yes, one I feel like he got a little nudge and wasn't able to finish it. If he puts it across the box, there might be a tap in there.
We'll talk about that.
The header was
such a good.
The header was a great save.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like they're not creating chances. They're creating chances, but the ball's not going in the back of the net. But we got lucky with one of the goals, but that wins you games. So for me, I'm looking at it as if the team wasn't creating these chances and wasn't making certain runs or getting shots on goal, I'll be like, well, I'm starting to wonder how we're gonna play against New York, how we're gonna survive in this playoff games. But the chances are there. The positive side of the chances and what they're creating is there. I feel why fans are getting maybe, I don't know, looking at it a bit differently is because maybe it's not the strikers that are getting the opportunities. They're not clear-cut chances. They're not like what we're used to seeing. Let's just say what we're used to seeing is clear-cut chances. It's like we're cutting in, or Lucho's getting chances, or he's hitting the post, hitting the bar, or Orishano's getting shots on goal, Kubo's getting a lot of chances. And I feel that's probably why the fans are like, well, it's Yedlin getting the chances. It's not our main players getting chances. But at the end of the day, we are creating chances, which is the positive thing. So no, I'm optimistic, Coach. I feel like we're creating chances. That's the main thing.
Yeah.
So we have to be positive about it.
And, as well as anyone that when another team is creating chances against you, even if they're not scoring, it makes it harder for you to generate chances offensively because you're under pressure. You're more 100%. Likely to just hit that ball clear or to maybe kick a ball out of bounds or something, as opposed to settle the ball down and try to build from the back. So overall, I think it's a good thing. Listener Rachel Rozelle, she wanted to talk about those turnovers in midfield, but also wanted our thoughts on Orishano as a striker alongside Kubo, and what are the odds we see that again in the playoffs. So I want to talk about that front 3, Luca, Lucho, and Kubo. And really a front 4 when you count how Assad played, because we talked about how often he came into the middle. Yeah. Let's talk about how well they work together. In the 7th minute, there's a really good bit of play between the front 3. It starts with Orishano back checking to win the ball. He plays long into the left channel for Kubo, who was stretching that line. He catches up to the ball and then waits on it to let his team catch up. And then in that spell of possession, the ball moves to the right half space, and Lucho plays a ball into the box for Kubo, lays it off for Orishano, who's running in. Orishano cuts it back to the right to Lucho at the corner of the box, and then he tries to find Orishano back in the box. And that's the play that eventually leads to Lucho trying to chip the ball to the back post, and it goes out for a goal kick. But it's like those plays, like the amount of fluidity in that touch here and that play, that good sustained pressure on the Philadelphia back line showed the quality of those guys on the ball. And even when the passes were not perfect, how they kept adjusting and getting a touch on the ball and keeping possession. There's another one in the 28th minute when Teenage Hadebe strides forward and plays Assad checking back off the left. And the action ahead of him is awesome. As that ball is coming into Assad, checking back towards Hadebe, you look and you see Kubo, who's already checking to the ball before Assad even has it. And then you have Lucho running in behind him. Orishano creating good space on the weak side, not coming towards the ball, keeping that backside defender honest. Assad just hits a first-time pass towards Kubo. And this, to me, that's like a pattern of play they worked on. The fact that Kubo knew to check too, the fact that Assad knew he was there. Kubo dummies it and lets the ball go in towards Lucho. And you're like, oh, great, Lucho is going to be on the ball. Then Lucho dummies it, and Orishano is running right behind him. And then Orishano tries to touch the ball through the defender's tackle, doesn't quite get it right. But again, you see that full of that fluidity. And so that's the thing, Justin. This is like vintage stuff from FCC that we've seen, that movement and that awareness. And none of these plays here ended up with actual shots on goal, but all of them had me on my edge of my seat being like, you know, that was good stuff. It made me excited to watch. And if I am a fan, I'm excited watching the passage of play, you got to imagine the defenders are clenching their butt cheeks a little bit, like worried that something big's going to happen, which is good for FC Cincinnati, right?
Yeah, it is good. But yeah, like you say, coach, when you're doing that, and you're creating chances, and you've got players like Orishano, Lucho, and Kubo, you are definitely worried as a defender, when they're running in behind, when they're on the ball, especially when they're not natural strikers. When you're a defender, I say a central defender, and you're playing against players that are not natural forwards, you also find it harder. You prefer to play against the actual number 9 because you know what their tendencies are. They're going to try and pin you. They're going to try running behind. They're going to try and come to feet. When you've got players that are not natural number 9s who like to drop into midfield, get the ball, turn and drive at you or run in behind, you find it very uncomfortable. And what is hard is that they've not had, I say the front three have not had a run of games to gain that consistency and understanding. Yes, they've had it in this game and the previous games, but if we look how often they've been able to play together as a front three, even with Assad now as a front four, even Yedlin now as an attacking player, how many games have they played like that, to gain that understanding, to gain that match confidence together, to understand, right, when he does that, I'm going to go in behind. If Orishano comes to feet, Kubo can stretch the field to give Lucho space. If Lucho's on the ball, who's going to show to feet? Who's going to run in behind? We can see Yedlin and Lucho get that understanding that when Lucho's got the ball, Yedlin makes the run in behind and he creates a chance. Now we're looking into the playoffs. Are we going to keep that attacking? Let's call it attacking free. Are we going to keep that attacking free, or are we going to change it? Because I feel that they need to keep with it and stick with it, because that is probably at the minute that's our best options attacking wise. Are we creating enough? Did we create enough chances as a front three? Now we look at it as did we create enough chances in this with this front three against this Philadelphia team? That's a question that we'll look at. But now going into the playoffs, are this front three now going to cause headache and a problem for this New York team? Because now that's how we have to look at it. Are they going to cause, okay, Philadelphia's gone. Is this front three now, we call it front three, going to cause more problems against New York in this playoff run than they did against Philadelphia? I think that's how we look at it. If we're saying, and fans are saying, that's going to be our front three.
Yeah. As a coach, I can say, the one big positive about FC Cincinnati mixing their lineup so much is, as an opposition coach, Nick Cushing for NYCFC, how do you prepare for FC Cincinnati? If it's Kubo and Lucho and Luca, that is a very different game plan than if it's Big Kev and Lucho 100%. And Nico. And like, how do you even plan for what you're going to do other than just saying, like, guys, we'll see the lineup when we see it?
I don't think you can plan. You can't plan for it because you don't know what they're going to do. Is that going to play into Pat Noonian's hand? It might do, because no team that Cincinnati have played can predict Cincinnati's lineup. So how do you prepare for that? You can't. You can only prepare for individual players playing in this position. If Orishano's playing on the left, you prepare for that. Is Orishano's playing on the right, you prepare for that. I feel the only player you can prepare for is Lucho.
Yeah,
that's exactly the only player you can prepare for.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that Pat Noonan can't even predict his lineup. I think he's using a magic 8 ball and he's saying, like, should Yuya Kubo play striker? Ask again later. All right, guys, lineup's coming out tomorrow. All right, Justin, let's talk about the goal they did score. the 4th minute of first half stoppage. I'm not going to describe the whole spell of possession, but
Mhm.
that whole spell of possession was what I'm talking about. Really good stuff, keeping that Union back line scrambling in defense. Eventually, the ball ends up with Orshano at the corner of the box on the FCC right. You have Kubo in the center of the box, and Lucho is just behind Orshano, showing to give him that option. Orshano gets fouled, but the ball lands at Lucho's feet, so the ref plays advantage. You can see the gravity that those players have. That Philadelphia backline shifted over that way. Lucho plays to the left half space to Yamil Assad. Again, there's great action ahead of him here, like I talked about
Mhm.
before. You have Orshano, Kubo, and Yedlin all making those darting runs into the box, knowing that his goal is going to be to float that ball in. So he floats the ball into the back post for Yedlin, who does a great job of heading it back across the goal instead of trying to go for goal because there's not a lot of power on the cross. He heads it towards Luca and Kubo. Luca gets kind of a little touch on it, but he can't control it. So the ball falls for Kubo, who scuffs a shot towards frame. It's blocked by Glesnes, but Glesnes can't clear. He's under pressure, and Kubo gets a block on that attempted clearance and then is able to stay active enough to poke the ball back to the top of the box for Yamil Assad, rather than let the Union player clear it. And then Assad just sees that opening and goal and finishes so coolly to the back post with the inside of his foot. Justin, it's one of those goals where you can be like, man, that was a bit of luck with that deflection and Kubo blocked the clearance, but also it was made from so much activity in the box and sustained pressure on that
Mhm.
Union back line. Goals like this in MLS happen all the time. What did you see with this goal that makes you hopeful that it is repeatable for FC Cincinnati?
I'd say the numbers in the box. We got a few numbers in the box. I mean, we're outnumbered in the box, but we've been able to get four players in the box, two on the back post, one centrally, one front post, and one a penalty area. We're able to win the header with Yedlin, which he got in a few times in the first half. He was able to make it count with a great head back in this instance to get the goal. And what I like about it is the fact that the ball drops to Kubo, and if this is not blocked, this first initial shot, I feel that's a goal. I think that's
Mhm.
a strike on goal, and it's going to be, we're looking at it as a potential a goal, which is great to see. And the fact that we then able to, Kubo doesn't give up on his shot. He's able to then carry on, fight for the ball. Ball falls to Assad, and what a finish! Calm and composed finish, which is great to see because we've got numbers then on the edge of the box. The ball falls out to the edge of the box. It is around the box, and we've got Hadebe, we've got Assad there, and we've got Lucho there. And we're also got players around there that are like, if this falls out, we can then get the second ball and react from it. And it was a great finish by Assad, but I just like the fact that we've got numbers in the box and we've not given up on the ball being deflected. And Kubo's thought, oh, it's been deflected, let me give up. The fact that he's fought for it and been able to find his way to Assad, and what a great finish.
Yeah, man. And that is the kind of thing Yuya Kubo, Lucho Acosta has it, Luca Orashano has it. That ability to stay active while that ball is bouncing around and like get that extra touch. In the build up to this goal, we saw it with Luca getting fouled, but able to kind of scoop the ball towards Lucho. It's like these are the
Mhm.
things that I don't see with Nico or Big Kev or Sergio Santos.
Mhm.
Oftentimes, if they're not playing an intentional pass, like if the play is a little bit broken, it's going to stay broken. Whereas these front three, I think just because of their athleticism and their quickness, they are able to keep that ball alive so often. Justin, you love to say that when you're playing well, good things happen for you, right? You get the luck
Yeah, of
when you're
course.
playing well. That second goal for FC Cincinnati, I'm not sure you could call it anything but pure luck. The
Yeah,
play
one hundred
to
percent.
force it was good because basically they had really good pressure. The ball went to Harriel on the FCC left. Assad pressed him, forced Harriel into an ill-advised pass in the midfield. Buka jumps that pass and wins the ball for Orashano. But from there, Orashano tries to scoop it to Lucho on the left and doesn't get it right. It's deflected off a defender. Looks like it's going to be won easily by Glesnes running back towards his own goal. But then Blake comes outside of the frame of the goal to be a back pass option, and Glesnes hits the back pass on frame and it trickles in. And that's the game winning goal, you know? And so I know you love to say when things are going well, good things happen for you. But, to need the opponent to score a goal like that kind of own goal to win the game, does it leave you feeling anything about like nerves heading into the playoffs in this, or are you all in on no, they played so well and they forced that back line to be under pressure and the good things happen when that happens?
No, I mean, they forced them to play backwards and the ball ended up going back. And I mean, you look at it, there's no pressure on him. He doesn't, he
No.
could even turn. Like there's no one around him, no pressure at all. I just feel it's just a miscommunication between the two. And at the end of the day, however a goal goes in, it goes in. And, you know, as fans and as Cincinnati, as a player, knowing it, you know, you just got to look at it and say, thanks. I even tweeted it saying, thank you for the goal. Because, and in these situations, you know, that's won us the game and that's got us 3 points. In a playoff game, now, if they was to do that in the playoffs, imagine that now in the playoffs and we need one more goal to get us through. That's a goal that's got us through to the playoffs. So you're saying, thanks very much.
Yeah.
We're moving on to the next one. So, yes, there's cause of concern that that was the winning goal. But at the end of the day, we created chances. And at the end of the day, as long as you outscore the opponent, no matter how the goal goes in, you know, you have to take it. And now going into the playoffs, however the goal goes in, coach, as long as you defeat the team, it doesn't matter how it goes in. So for me, I'm like, all right, thank you. On to the next. And I'm going to be the same in the playoffs. However we get the job done, no matter if they want to give us a goal, we'll take it.
And as concerning as it is, you can't divorce the fact from the goal being the game winner that it happened in a point in the match where the Union were not generating anything. So now FCC is up 2-1. Doesn't matter whether they scored the goal or not. They're up 2-1. They don't really have to push numbers forward. No. And then you have substitutions and they hold on to that lead.
Kills the game.
Let's talk about a few reasons why that front three might not totally be clicking into gear. And so like, even though they're playing really well, so many of those passages of play did not lead to shots or were just about great chances, but really ended up being half chances. And I'll get your thought on these. So, you know, first, I think we've already mentioned it. It's you brought it up right in the beginning. What would this front three look like? And maybe add Assad on the left if they had played 3 or 4 matches leading up to this point, leading up to the playoffs. So that leads me to this, and I think you've already said, but Rachel asked a specific question, like, what are the chances we see this in the playoffs? Do you think, in your opinion, is this like, yeah, in Penn, this has to be the lineup for game 1 against NYCFC?
For me, I feel it has to be penned in, and the only reason I say that is because then you'll have to change personnel in other positions. Because if you then take, you know, if you bring Big Kev or
Nico
Santos. Or Santos in there, I'm just thinking of other attacking options there. If you bring one of them in, it's kind of like, okay, now who do you take out? Do you take Yedlin out or do you take Assad out? Now, I don't think you can take Yedlin out. I don't think you can take Assad out because of their attacking options and their attacking threat. But do you still get that same attacking threat if you put Orishano or Kubo there? That's my next question. Who is better situated and positioned in them wide areas for that if he was to take one of them out? But for me, coach, I personally think that they'll stick with this lineup. And I feel that was kind of a statement to say this is what we're going to go with into the playoff run. How do you see it as a coach? Would you then think, right, would you change it or would you keep things the same?
No way. I agree completely with you. I think this lineup, and you called it on the last podcast when you called for this lineup puts Orishano in the best position where he can be creative, he can find space to dribble, but doesn't have to be relied upon to defend. And Yamil Assad, also not a defender, but I think he's a little more diligent in his defending. And I think that's because he's a veteran, right? He's not a kid and he understands the gravity of that. You know, so I think this front three specifically, I don't know, we'll get to changes along the back line if we'd make those in the second part of the show, but I think front three is in Penn for me. Here is one other problem I noticed though. Do you think having, you know, because we're going to put Assad in this because he is so involved, 3 Argentines, Assad, Orishano, and Lucho Costa, plus has anybody checked Yuya Kubo's passport lately? Has he gotten, you know, to be eligible for the Argentinian national team because he's up there? Do you think the fact that they're always looking to play beautiful soccer and combine and do flicks and tricks and roll the ball backwards instead of just pass it, or pass it instead of crossing or shooting. Do you think that that hurts the team overall? Is this something that the coach needs to be like, guys, play simple? Or do you say, no way, man, they're creative, they're Argentinian plus Kubo. You take the good with the bad, you let them do all these tricky things, and you hope that it comes off once or twice in a game and doesn't hurt you in the other parts?
No, I feel you take the good with the bad. I feel like they know what they're doing. Yes, sometimes it comes off, sometimes it doesn't. But sometimes, players miss a simple pass, and you're like, well, hold on a minute. So I feel like that's them as players, and us as fans, we get to understand that, and we're seeing that that's who they are. And I feel like you need to bring that out in them to be themselves on the field. Like other players, they need to be themselves. That's the way they've known. That's the way they've grown up. That's the Argentinian way. So yeah, I don't mind it. I've got a lot of time for it, but I do also say that sometimes when it is time to just be simple and play simple, the simple pass sometimes is the most effective pass.
Yeah.
So I feel like you just need to have a word with them and say, look, I'm all for the skills, the flicks, and this in the right moments and the right times. But when it is on to play simple, they're probably the most effective passes and probably create more chances than a flick.
Yeah, like in the 48th minute, the ball went into Orishano right at the top of the box, dead center, and it's on his left foot. And you think every time he's going to shoot this. And instead, he tries to like roll the ball behind him to Lucho running, like kind of like a back heel, but like roll it with the sole of his foot. And he doesn't get it right. And you're like, man, you could have curled that into the left hand side of the goal in your sleep, man. That is your shot. The last thing that I think that I want to get your thoughts on, whether this is a feature or a bug, about these chance creation. And you talked about it before, because of the gravity of those three guys, and then Yamil Assad on the left and Lucho floating out to the left. That means a lot of the best chances of the match fell to DeAndre Yedlin. In the 4th minute, right away, there's a lovely bit of one play. Cheeto plays to Orishano, checking back, lays it first time under for Buka. Buka plays it straight through up the right to Yedlin, and Yedlin is in on goal. He can lay it across to Kubo for a tap in. Instead, he gets a little nudge. He's falling. He hits it into the side netting. The 52nd minute, there's a ball into Buka on the half turn. Does a great job to roll his defender. Plays forward to Lucho in the hole. Lucho spins and plays a beautiful ball in behind the Union defense for Yedlin, who, again, in on goal. Nothing but the whites of the goalkeeper's eyes to look at. He has Kubo wide open next to him because Kubo had strayed offside, so now he's onside and wide open in the box. He can shoot himself. He can roll it square to Kubo for a tap-in. Instead, there's also Lucho coming in behind. He can pick out. Instead, he cuts it back. Maybe he's trying to pick out Lucho and gets it wrong. I don't know, but it ends up to Orishano. And then instead of Orishano hitting it first time, he tries to take a touch to get it on his left foot. His first touch is bad, and then his shot is blocked. And like those two chances are huge. Add in the header we talked about earlier. And I just want to ask, Justin, Yedlin used to be known as a big offensive threat in this league when he was young. He was never a goal scorer, but always an asset in the offensive third. His speed, his ability to get the ball across, to play simple passes in and around the box. Clearly, he still has that speed. You saw how often he got in behind. Was this an off game in terms of his offensive production, that final ball? Or is he not that guy anymore? And if he's not that guy anymore, is this going to be a problem with this offense that because of the gravity of those other 4 players, that he's going to have to be able to get 1 or 2 of those chances right for FC Cincinnati to score these goals?
No, I think it was an off day. I think if you look along his playing career in games, he's had these moments, and other times he's created assists or scored goals, and I feel that's just how we play. I feel like the first header was a great save. You have to put that down as a great save. He's a small player. He's able to get up and head the ball. It's a great save. The other one, I feel like he lost composure, after running so long and so far, for so fast. He lost a bit of composure and a little bit of a nudge. You do go down. That's normal. But I feel that, he's not getting any younger, but he's still able to get in these chances. He's still got the speed to run in behind, and it's great that he's still getting these opportunities for the team. Now, if he wasn't creating these chances or getting these opportunities and his end product was not there at all, then you then question it. It's like, right, now who do we need to look at elsewhere? But I feel that he's great getting these chances, he's creating these chances, he's getting into these areas. Now all it is now is it's hard to now work on his end product at his age, but he still now needs to know that when he gets there, how do I now be more effective? And I feel as he's getting on, he can still be that player, and I still feel that he can improve in that area. And he probably will do, and it's a great sign for me that he's still getting in these areas, and he's still a threat for the team, which is great.
Yeah, in reality, I agree with you because when you look at it and you think like, man, those are three big chances, maybe the three biggest chances of the game, all either fell
Yeah, they
to
were
Yedlin
100%.
or through
Mhm.
Yedlin, and none of them ended in goals. But then you say, well, actually, his header, you said, it's a pretty good header. I don't know it's
A
not
great
like
save.
for sure Big Kev scores that. Maybe he does. Maybe he puts it a little more into the side netting, but
Mhm.
he hit it hard and on frame. And then his one right off the bat of the game, you can say, well, it's early in the game. It was kind of his first touches and he got pushed a little bit.
Yeah.
So maybe he's 1 for 2 there. But then the other one, he should have laid it across to Kubo for an easy tap in. But in reality,
Yeah.
he didn't enough. He did enough to get it to Orishano. And if Orishano first times that with his right foot, it's like Assad does, just steer it into that back post. It's an easy goal. Instead, I
Mhm.
think Luca was surprised it made it through to him, tried to touch it onto his left and it's blocked. So you think really he did good enough with 2 of those 3 chances that teams are going to have to be accounting for him and being like, man, if he gets in behind us, bad things can happen.
Yeah,
In terms of the
they're
overall,
gonna have to look out for him.
yeah, totally. In terms of the overall offense, the other question Rachel had was about the turnovers in midfield. And I agree with her that this is still a problem. There's too many
Mm,
of the kinds of
yeah.
turnovers, Justin, that are not just like a misplayed pass, but they're so sloppy. They put you in transition defense right away.
Yeah.
There's Kubo leading up to the Philly goal, plays a square pass to nobody, and Philadelphia just storms in. That was right before the Philadelphia goal. In the 22nd minute,
Mhm.
Yedlin missed Buka on a square ball, and it went right to McGlynn. And McGlynn's again just running at our back
Mhm.
line because of the guy who's playing it and where it's happening. In the 74th minute, there's a ball from Yedlin, squares it to Obi at the edge of the offensive third. And I don't know what he's doing. I think he tries to one touch it back towards the center backs, but he kind of whiffs on it and it goes right to a Philadelphia attacker and they're off on the break. And that's just a few of them. Justin, I don't know what you do about this because this is not a structural problem. This is not a problem of skill. It's not like, oh, you have a player in the middle of the park in Obi that just isn't good on the ball, or in Kubo Yedlin that just isn't good on the ball. This is just lapses of concentration. As a
Mhm.
veteran in the locker room or as a coach, we know you're getting your badges. What do you say to these players to try to be like, guys, these big brain farts could cost us in the playoffs? One goal could send you home for the rest of the season. You got to stay focused.
Yeah, like you say, it is a lack of concentration. Misplaced passes happen probably everywhere on the field, but I feel in these key areas when you're playing, I would say in centrally into the midfield, you need to make sure these passes do count and make sure they go to the player because now coming into a crucial stage where it's win or go home, these moments could lose you games. And it is just concentration. And I feel it's just taking that extra bit of care and attention to detail, I would say, to make sure that these passes make the intended target. Because we've seen it in games before, leading up to this game, that we've played centrally and it's not gone to the right player, and teams have gone and scored.
Yeah.
So me, really, I would be just saying, just take real care and attention, and just make sure the pass gets to where it needs to get to.
Let me ask you this, Justin, as a player who's played in the Champions League, even does the setting, the playoffs, single elimination, do or die, does that alone elevate the player's focus? You know,
Yeah,
is it
100%.
more likely in a regular season game that you'll kind of let your mind float and not make good contact with the ball,
Yeah.
whereas in these other, you have all the adrenaline and you're really laser focused in? Will that you think do enough to elevate the play?
Yeah, 100%. I feel your game raises once you get into the playoff win or go home situations. So I feel these moments in games, hopefully it shouldn't happen, yet they do happen. That's nature. Everyone makes mistakes. But I feel, players' minds are like, right, we've got where we need to get to. In the back of your mind, like, right, our focus is now playoffs. Now, once you get to that playoffs, yes, people say you need to trade and play to get there, but I still feel once you're in your playoff people, players, and professionals have that playoff mindset. They have Champions League mindset. They have a winning mentality. Have their mindset with certain players are able to switch it on that they don't make these mistakes now. Now they know it's crucial. They won't make these mistakes. And I feel that potentially can happen in the team. And these lapse of concentrations happen when you've known where you need to get to. But now we need to get to the next stage or into the next round. Me personally, I'll be the player, right? I know I need to make extra care in this pass because it means more. In these games that, Philadelphia, okay, they need to win. We want to win. But it doesn't mean as much as it will do now in the playoff if you make that mistake, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and it's just
So
natural.
now you're going to take extra care. Yeah, just naturally, you're going to be like, right, I'm up for it. I'm not going to make that mistake that I made before. Okay,
Yeah.
hands up. That was my fault in the league. In the playoffs, I'll make sure I don't make that mistake.
Yeah, no player is sitting there being like, "Oh, it's playoffs now. I'm going to focus more." But it's natural.
Yeah.
Your body is
That, yeah,
really laser
it is,
focused, which is why we also see some players play tight. And my hope is that FC Cincinnati, with the veterans that they have, they're relying on here, Yedlin and Assad, Lucho, Obi, Kubo, Miles. Hopefully, those guys will be able to elevate the play of guys like Luca Orishano and Buka. Buka seems pretty unflappable. I'm not too worried about him. Justin, we need to talk about this defense, which I thought was pretty darn good. But first, before we get there, I want to let the listeners know that we are once again brought to you by Beyond Exercise. Beyond Exercise is a local physical therapy and fitness business that helps people stay active and injury-free. In fact, they have helped some of our very own local MLS, MLS Next, and FCC Academy players with their health and performance needs, as well as Natty SC down at the 7v7 tournament. Check out their suite of services at gobeyondexercise.com. All right, Justin, let's get to that defense, your specialty. Brett Sova says, what do you think about this being the first choice defensive line going into the playoffs? Rachel, again, thoughts on Hadebe's performance. To start with the defense, we have to start with the Philadelphia Union goal because it happened before the 2-minute mark, before we could even get a sense of how the Union were going to try to attack FCC. Let's talk about that, and then we'll go from there. It actually starts with a throw from the FCC left, and Harriel is taking the throw. And when you just pause it with Harriel there, you see Leon Flock pushed over to receive the throw. Quinn Sullivan's over there. McGlynn is on that side of the field in the half space. And you just look, Obi is kind of dropped in to defend. But right off the bat, if you don't even count McGlynn in the middle because he's not all the way over there, the Union just have a 3v2 because nobody is guarding the thrower. You have Assad over there, and you have Obi over there. And then you have Hadebe standing in the box, in the center of the box, marking Ura for Philadelphia. So it's a 3v2 over there. So the throw goes into Flock. Obi steps off Quinn Sullivan towards Flock. And Sullivan right away starts to float in behind that group of FCC players. You see Buka notice that, and you actually see him start to drop to pick up Sullivan. But then the ball is shifted centrally to McGlynn, and Buka stops, dropping toward the ball. And goes to step towards or dropping towards Sullivan and goes to step towards the ball. And Obi leaves Leon Flock to go chase the ball to try to win it. So McGlynn the ball into Sullivan. And I don't think I've seen anybody that open in the box, short of a 1v1 breakaway with the keeper, in a long time. So McGlynn, after he feathers the ball into Sullivan in so much space, he takes like 3 touches, and then he just laces a ball into the far post before Hadebe can close. Justin, this seems like a really basic breakdown to me. The fact that they allowed it to be 3v2 off the throw-in, how do you see what went wrong?
Yeah, I'd say off the back, I'm watching it as we talk about it, is I feel Kubo can get back there and help out once the throw's been made. Even if he doesn't get there, I feel if he even jogs back to get to the player, it still unsettles him. And then as the play develops, you see Obi tracking his player, and then once the ball gets played across, he goes to the ball. And I feel that's his intensity. He's like, I must win the ball, I must win the ball, I must put pressure on the ball. But I feel if he holds his position, we've said this about him a few times, or about the midfield, and some of the other players in certain situations. I feel like sometimes if players hold their position for a split second or a little bit longer, I don't feel this pass is going to be made in behind him. As defenders and as players, we've told, never let the ball in go split between 2 players. and that's happened there. So I feel if Obi holds his position, closes the central area with Buka, make them go over to the other side, I don't think this goal happens. But once you get split in between there, and the player's got so much time and space, I mean, he can either pick the near post, he can pick a cross out, and he finds the bottom corner. But I feel if Obi, sorry, holds his position now, I don't think this goal happens.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. But I think that's a little bit of trying to solve for a symptom instead of the root problem, right? It's like, well, if you put a band-aid on the cut, it stops bleeding. Yeah, but what if you just don't cut yourself to begin with, right? I think we've talked about this a lot. FCC loves to have an extra center back that is free of mark, just hanging out in the back line, not doing anything. And here it was Miles Robinson, right? Miles Robinson is standing 5 feet away from Teenage Hadebe, who is marking Mikel Ura, right? What you're
Mm.
supposed to do in that case is your left center back should be pushed over. When you play in a back three, I've talked about this a lot. This is just the X's and O's. I understand it doesn't happen perfectly in a game, but how I teach a player with film or on a whiteboard to play in a back three, back five is when the ball is on your side, the strong side. So the left side for Teenage playing left center back, you become a left fullback. You shift all the way over and you defend on that side. The left wing back on that side, Assad, becomes more like a left winger because you're now defending the other team's wing back, probably, right? Like a winger would. Then
Hmm.
Miles becomes like a left center back in a back four. And Joe becomes like a right center back in a back four. And then Yedlin drops in like a true right back in a back four. You shift into a back four as the ball goes wide. And what that does is it allows you to pull that line across so you don't have that extra man in the middle. When you have 3 center backs playing against 1 forward or 2 forwards at the most, if people play in like a 4-4-2 or a 3-5-2, you have to do that because that center back can't just be a spare player. Certainly, you can also do some of this by dropping a center back in, but the Philadelphia Union decided over and over again, Justin, that they wanted to attack the FCC left. They floated Mikel
Hmm.
Ura over there to match him up on Hadebe, which is, I think, why Hadebe was on him for this header. They would run Quinn Sullivan out of midfield to the left wing, push Nathan Harriel up on that side, and then always have McGlynn or Gazdag or whoever else over there and overload. 53% of their attack, Justin, came down that FCC left. That's compared to only 25 in the center and 22 on the FCC right. When an opponent overloads one side of the pitch like that, do you think that I'm right in terms of that proper back three, or do you think really just the midfield? And you had mentioned even Kubo being able to come back and help. Do you think it's more on them to recognize because some of that overload is coming from players running out of the midfield or that right back pushing up? Do you think it's more on them to recognize and help out there?
Uh, this, yeah, it's hard to answer that. If I'll be honest, just because when you know a team's going to overload that side, I feel you need to bring over extra help. And why I say that is because, like in this instance, you're going to have 3 players overloading that side. You're going to have someone who's going to pin the centre back. So technically, the centre back, unless he's been told by Miles Robinson to release himself, he won't release himself from the central area just because he knows he's got a man there, unless Miles pushes him over. I just feel they targeted that area due to the inexperience of the 2 playing together. Um, and that's the reason why I feel like they targeted. Maybe that's their strongest side to attack, but I just feel they targeted that side just because of, I would say, that it was their opportunity to say, right, they've not played together. Assad likes to attack, so let's attack down this side and push him back. And maybe he's not the best of defenders, so let's try and utilize that and create chances from that. But I still feel that Obi's over there to help, but defensively, I feel like there needs to be more communication, and there needs to be more of a defensive understanding. Like you say, is if it's in that situation, does the central back like Miles, tell Hadebe to move over straight away quickly to get into position? Then you don't need Obi over there. You can stay more centrally, and Buka can stay centrally. Or is it a situation where Miles says, no, stay where you are. Obi, you go over help. Kubo, you then go over and help out, and we'll lock them in
Yeah.
on one side.
And
So
I
I
think
feel like it's a
Justin,
communication thing.
that, and you're dead on. I'm talking about like the technical way to do this. And you're saying, well, if you communicate, then there's other ways to do it. And I think that's what FCC wanted. FCC wanted Obi to kind of, when Hadebe stretched wide, they want Obi to drop in between Miles and Hadebe in a sense, like in that space, right? And not have Miles come out of the middle. And when Hadebe doesn't go wide, Obi or Buka is meant to drop into that space between Hadebe and Assad. But that requires two things. Number one, communication, which because they've been in and out of the lineup, Miles is in the center, then Cheeto's in the center, Miles is on international duty, they don't have yet. And second, it relies on Obi to not just be like, see ball, get ball, see ball, get ball, see ball, get ball, which I'm not even saying you want. Maybe it's good that Obi is like that. That's why I think if Noonan just got back to basics and said, hey, Miles, you can't stay in the middle. We're going to have to shift like this, and let those back three, who are all very good players, center backs, Hadebe, Miles, Cheeto, when Murphy's out there, allow them to work together more than trying to also pull midfielder into that back line.
Yeah, because, sorry, coach, what we're also seeing now in the last few games is when Buka or Obi have had to go over across to help out, it's now drawn the team and now stretched. Now with the Orlando goal, was it last week, where they was able to switch the play, get the ball across and be able to cross it. Now the two midfield central players now are out of position because they're asked to now help out. So now when the ball gets switched over to the other side quickly, they're not able to get there. And that's creating a problem now for the team, and defensively that's creating a problem. So I feel that needs to be sorted out as well, and just like you say, get back to basics and get that understanding between, I would say, the two units, the defensive unit and midfield unit.
I mean, I will
to get that
say,
understanding going again, especially in this.
Totally. And I will say, we're sitting here talking about how this was a little bit of a structural problem and that they seemed a little gappy on the left, and they seemed pretty okay with just leaving Hadebe out there on an island at times with Miles staying in the middle. Also, within all of that, Philadelphia Union generated almost nothing outside of that first chance so early in the game. You know, I know you love the stat XG, Justin. I know you love it, but
I'm going to start studying on it.
Yeah, right. What they basically say is that if an XG chance is above 0.18 XG, that would be called a good scoring opportunity. Philadelphia Union did not create a single chance that was above 0.18. Now, they had the goal, which was wide open, but even that was from a tight angle. He wasn't dead center in the box. They had a shot off a free kick in the 45th minute that looked dangerous. That's the one where Ora ran in and they hit that quick free kick. And he would have had to try to kind of like make contact with the ball as it's rolling past him and didn't get a lot of it. They had a shot at the end of the game, more like that scramble tactics free zone, and it fell to the center back, Elliott. But other than that, and none of those were above 0.18. All of those would have, including the goal, had to be really good shots in order to score. So let's talk about, Rachel's question about Teenage Hadebe and Brett's question about, is this the back line? So first of all, Hadebe, we've seen him a couple games now. This is by far the most amount of minutes that we've played. How do you rate him? Just in terms of just as a player? Keep Murphy out of it for now. We'll talk about him versus Murphy in a minute. But how do you rate Hadebe's performance in this?
I'd say in the last few games, I feel he's done okay. I mean, I think I spoke about it. I think he's probably in there for his MLS experience. He's an experienced international. He's an experienced player. He's played internationally. So I feel he's in there playing because of that. He needs minutes leading up to the playoffs. But I feel he's done okay, coach. I'll be honest with you, I feel he's done all right. It's still, like we say, when we're talking about new players, it takes them a little while to settle in. And I feel for the amount of minutes he's played, the amount of games he's got in such a short space of time, to have to fit in and slot in and do a job straight away under the circumstances, I feel he's done all right. And I think it's a good addition to have. I'd like to see him play more games, but he's not got that time. It would be great to see him play more games, but he has not got that time. So I feel he's slotted in and done a good job. So I'm happy with him. I'm a big Murphy fan, but I'm happy that Hadebe's come in and performed very, very well. I feel he's decent on the ball. Obviously, he's got that physical presence about him. And I feel he'd be a good fit for the playoff run. Do I feel he's going to start in this playoff game? Yeah.
Yeah, and so that answers it, right? When you talk about whether he's going to start, whether we're going to see this back line, uh, this is where I want to kind of compare he and Ian Murphy, because I'm with you. I'm an Ian Murphy fan. I think Hadebe's 1v1 defense is about the same as Murphy. You know, his
Mhm.
tackling, his aerial duels probably a little better than Murphy. He's got that physical presence you mentioned.
Mhm.
He did get dribbled once by Quinn Sullivan in the first half, but we've seen Murphy get dribbled too. The thing that I think Hadebe does much better than Ian Murphy is he reads the game so well, and then his ability to close really quickly. It allowed him to have 5 blocks and 3 interceptions. This is where, like, Murphy's first play when he came into the game in this match was a little slow to a read, closing on the ball in the midfield and hacking a guy down in the middle. How many yellow cards have we
Mhm.
seen Ian pick up because he's just a half step slow,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah. Mhm.
closing on that
Mhm.
ball? Whereas Hadebe was getting there before the attacker because he was closing on it just that half step earlier. I also think, though, where this gets him into into trouble, Hadebe, is that he gets a bit too aggressive stepping into the midfield and leaving runners in behind. Basically, when his
Yeah.
man has the ball and then passes it, he does that Obi thing where then he wants to step to the ball instead of following that runner.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that meant Miles Robinson did a fair bit of cleaning up behind him. Where I think Murphy is better than Hadebe is in possession. I thought Hadebe seemed to know where he wanted to pass the ball, but I think he looked not comfortable. He looked a little panicked. A lot of his balls were not crisp, right? They were bouncing,
Mhm.
not really like good, hard line splitting passes. But overall, I think I agree with you when you talk about that defensive ability, which is what you're out there for as a center back. And he was good enough on the ball. You know, I said he
Mhm.
completed those passes. I think that Hadebe looks to be the first choice. I'm not 100% sold on that. I'm not like, oh, that's an easy choice there. Like when we talked about the
Yeah, it's
front
not easy
three, how we
choice,
were
no.
pretty, yeah.
Mhm.
But I do think that this is the line that we're going to see. Um, as we wrap up this game, Justin, are there any other performances? We've talked specifically about the front three, a little bit about Assad, Hadebe. Are there any other performances that you want to call out as particularly impressive, or you want to see more, anything like that?
Uh, no, not really. I'd just say at the end of the day, it's a victory, and like you say, you're playing against a Philadelphia team who needed to win. We was able to see it out, and like we say, coach, yeah, we are talking about certain points and certain areas of the game that we feel that could be improved or could be better. We spoke about the goal, but all in all, we've not really spoke about at length, or we didn't talk about Philadelphia creating chances after chances after chances. We only spoke about one or two chances, coach.
Yeah.
So in 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 the all height of things and in the light of things, we have to look at the positives and say we hardly spoke about things of Philadelphia breaking us down, outplaying us, outdoing this against us. So that's a main positive, and I feel that's credit to the team. You know, look at the past two matches going into this one. You're probably thinking, well, this is a bit of a tricky one, but you know, I feel the whole team and the team have done well and they prepared well for this game.
Yeah. I agree. I would call out two performances that I was particularly impressed by that I don't think you see a ton in the stats, but I just thought they were really good. As I thought Miles Robinson was awesome in the center of the back three.
Mhm.
He was so good at tracking forwards into midfield and stepping when needed out of that central position instead of always trying to pass them off the midfielders. I talked about him having to move over and clean up behind Hadebe. He also was really good on the ball. He was completed 4 or 5 long passes. He had a
Mhm.
possession loss ratio of only 8%. And then Roman Celentano, the number of times he came out to claim crosses or to punch crosses, it's not something we've seen a lot out of him, that aggressive ability to take control of his box. And I thought that was a really good sign. The goal that happened, it was a low XG chance, but it got laced and the guy was wide open. So you can't really fault Roman for that. I looked back at it. His angle might be a tiny bit off, but if he saves that, you would be saying fantastic save. So I would not call that a
Yeah, yeah.
mistake on him. So those
Mhm.
two players. All right, Justin. Before we get to the mailbag, I want to take a minute to thank all of our incredible listeners for supporting our show each and every week. Thanks for downloading, watching on YouTube, listening online on CincinnatiSoccerTalk.com. However you consume this podcast, thanks for being here. Please continue to get in touch with us with questions and comments. We would love for you to spread the word. You can rate and review the show over at CincinnatiSoccerTalk.com/Coach Apple Podcasts. You can tell a friend. You can tweet about us. You can Instagram about us. Follow us on social and retweet our stuff. All of that helps. And of course, you set the agenda for the show, listeners. So if you have questions about tactics or coaching, or you want Justin's perspective as a player, you can always get at us in social media or drop us a note in the mailbag. Speaking of the mailbag,
you've got mail.
Our first and only question, Justin, comes from Lance Melching, who wants to know, he says, FCC seemed to match Philadelphia's physicality in the second half without losing composure. Have they learned a lesson about not losing composure and getting drawn into silly fouls and cards? Or is Philadelphia just not as cynical as other opponents? So first of all, Justin, do you agree with the premise that FCC in the past has let teams get into their heads and get drawn into silly fouls and have lost their composure in key moments of late? Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, they have done.
Yeah. So then in this match, do you think that they were better at keeping their cool? Or do you think that it was just the fact that Philadelphia, it's more of a team where they have mutual respect? Philadelphia didn't get too Red Bullsy, too cynical? Or do you think like, no, actually, I think this team is maturing before our eyes and has shown they can meet the physicality of that game without getting drawn into all the extracurriculars?
I would say situational, coach. We're in a situation where we're in the playoffs. We don't need to get involved in all that. Now, if this is a playoff game and things aren't going our way, or it's a different situation, we need to win, or different circumstances, Philadelphia playing in a certain way, like a Red Bull way, or they're getting under our skin, they're doing what they used to do. Now, I feel we're going to be a different team. And would we react differently? Probably. We already know we're in the playoffs. We already know our situation. So in our minds and probably in the players' situation, we're probably like, all right, we don't need to get involved in it. You do what you need to do. We won't need to get involved. But I feel when there's added pressure, that extra desire to want to win, to need to win, to advance to the next round or get that 3 points you need, I feel within yourself, you've got that burning desire to be like, no, I want to win. I want the ball. I want this. I want that. So then I feel that's where you then be like, okay, they're getting under our skin a bit because, you want the ball, you want to win. So I feel like it's definitely situational in that regard. 100%.
I think that's the thing. I'm not convinced that they're matured yet. I think they just weren't frustrated because they were playing well. And the question is, it's certainly not, in my opinion, it certainly was not that Philadelphia was not cynical. In the 32nd minute, Hadebe shields a ball out over the line and Sullivan just gives him a forearm and Hadebe reacts, but he just grabs the arm as opposed to like pushing him back or anything. Roman comes over to calm him down immediately. In the 33rd minute, Cheeto is shielding Baribeau and Baribeau actually puts him in a headlock and falls backwards, like body slams him. Cheeto doesn't react at all. In the 39th minute, Assad gets rid of the ball on the left touchline, and then Baribeau like levels him. It's not vicious, but definitely, as they say on your side of the pond, he left a little bit extra in on Assad there. Again, Assad, no reaction. Baribeau gets a yellow card. The 66th minute, Bedoya body slams Assad, and Assad gets a yellow card, but not for reacting to the foul. He gets a yellow card for stepping up and grabbing the ball and tossing it forward, like to take the free kick from 10 yards ahead. He gets it for time wasting. So all of these hard fouls, some that the ref did not punish with cards, some that he did. But what you see is you did not see Lucho Acosta. You did not see DeAndre Yedlin getting in the ref's face a ton because the frustration wasn't there. And so this is going to be my appeal that will absolutely fall on deaf ears. But and sort of a question to you, Justin, do you think that not only were they playing well and it's not frustrated, but do you think that it's easier for FC Cincinnati to do when they're playing on the road to stay calm because they don't have the Bailey and everybody cheering, chanting F you ref and ref you suck and booing? And do you think that affects the players' willingness to devolve into complaining and hard fouls and getting cards? And do you think when they come back home, this might be something they have to be a little bit more careful that they don't get swept up in the emotion of the moment?
I'd say it's the emotional side of it, and like I'd say previously, it depends on the situation of the game, the state of the game, how the opposition are treating the state of the game. If you are a team that Cincinnati, if we're behind and we need to win, and the players are falling over, they're doing little dirty things, you're going to get wound up by it because you want the ball, you want a great chance, you want to attack. We've seen it before. You create a bad pass when you're trying to attack and score goals, and within yourself you're frustrated, and that ball's over. So I feel, yes, the fans will play a part in that, booing the referee, and they get behind you, they get under your skin because they want to win, you want to win. Away from home, you haven't got that, but you've also got the opponent fans who will be, jeering the other team on. But I just say if we can keep our emotional side in check, I feel that'll go a long way. But I just feel it's just the emotional side of wanting to win and not having that desire to want to get the victory and want to get, into the MLS Cup final, and that's the burning desire that every player and fans are going to want to have. The players are going to have it driven into them, want it more than anybody. So, any certain situations are going to trigger you off. If you're behind, it's definitely going to trigger you off because you want to be better. You want to be better. You sometimes the game might not be going your way, and any little thing will trigger you off. But if we can keep our emotional side in check and be able to play our game, I hope we'll be okay. But we'll be okay, coach. We'll be all right. It'll be an interesting 2 games, 3 games. That's for sure.
And that's the thing. Win or lose, devolve into hard fouls and cards, or keep our cool. You and I will be here to break it down after it happens. I don't know exactly what our playoff recording schedule is going to be, Justin. So listeners, make sure you follow me at FC Cincinnati Tack Talk, and I'll tweet it about. We'll figure it out. We'll get episodes out about at least 2 of, if there's 3 games, at least 2 of them will have episodes. We might have to combine some episodes depending on when the games are. But other than that, Justin, anything else you have for the listeners?
No, nothing at the minute. I'm just excited for the playoff run. I don't know if I'll make the game, but no, I'm excited for the game. If not, I'll be cheering and shouting at my TV from home. But I'm excited for it. I'm happy they got into the playoffs. It's going to be a tough game, but I'm ready for it, coach. I know you're ready for it. The fans are ready for it. The players will be more than ready for it. So let's send all the positive vibes leading up to the game and during the game, and let's get behind the team.
I love it, Justin. I love it. Positive vibes abound. That's why I don't boo, by the way. And that is it for this episode of Talking Tactics with Coach Gough. If you want to do us a huge favor, make sure you're subscribed wherever you're listening, and head over to CincinnatiSoccerTalk.com/Coach Apple Podcast to rate and review the show. Other than that, thank you so much for being here with us and listening. Thanks to producer Mike for making this show audible. And thanks, as always, to my brilliant co-host, Justin Hoyte. I had so much fun today, and I'm hoping you did too. This is Coach Brad Gough reminding you that soccer is a privilege. So whether watching, coaching, or playing, don't forget this is supposed to be fun, and have yourself a smile.